The Leadership Challenge and the Leadership Practices Inventory, a UA Currents production. Once upon a time there were two guys who were very interested in leadership. Their names are Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. They saw a lot of examples of great leadership, and this got them to wondering, what is it that leaders are doing during their personal best leadership moments? So they gathered case studies from all over the world, and as they analyzed them, they discovered something important. The difference was not personality or charisma, but behavior. And that's good news, because behavior can be learned. As they further analyzed the behaviors that resulted in personal best leadership moments, they categorized them into 5 core practices. These core practices are: model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. For each of the 5 core practices, there are 2 commitments. Let's take a look at each of the practices and its commitments. The first practice is model the way. The commitments for this practice are: clarify values by finding your voice and affirming shared values, and set the example by aligning actions with shared values. Values act as a compass for us as we make decisions and as we learn to speak out for what we believe in. The second practice is inspire a shared vision. This practice is about envisioning the future by imagining exciting and ennobling possibilities, and enlisting others in a common vision by appealing to shared aspirations. This vision does not have to involve a huge goal. It just has to be worthy of struggle. In this practice, we learn to communicate that vision to others in a compelling way. The next practice is challenge the process. This practice is about searching for opportunities by seizing the initiative and looking outward for innovative ways to improve. And also experimenting and taking risks by constantly generating small wins and learning from experience. This practice is where disruptive leadership would fit in. Real leaders are not ever satisfied with the status quo and are constantly looking for ideas that will improve products and services. Enable others to act is the next practice. To improve at this practice, we work on fostering collaboration by building trust and facilitating relationships, and strengthening others by increasing self-determination and developing competence. Those who are effective at this practice are people who are often looked at as mentors or coaches. The last practice is encourage the heart. This practice is about recognizing contributions by showing appreciation for individual excellence, and celebrating the values and victories by creating a spirit of community. This practice encourages us to notice those around us and acknowledge things they do that are aligned with our values. Now that we've reviewed the 5 practices and 10 commitments, let's take a look at how the Leadership Practices Inventory, or LPI, fits in. Looking back at the 5 core practices, we see that for each of the core practices, there are 6 behaviors in the LPI. So that's 5 practices times 6 behaviors for a total of 30 behaviors. Each of the questions asks about one of these behaviors. By asking others to complete the assessment, you get a more complete picture of how you are showing up in different aspects of your work and how effective you are as a leader. This is referred to as a 360-degree assessment. Each question is answered on a 10-point scale, with a score of 1 indicating that the behavior is almost never seen, and a score of 10 indicating that a behavior is almost always seen. There are 60 points possible for each practice. Note that these scores are not based on a 100-point scale. Jim and Barry have found that those who engage in these behaviors more frequently are seen as being more effective as leaders. Suppose you get a low score on some of the behaviors. This does not mean that the observer doesn't like you. It simply means that he or she is not seeing you engage in those behaviors. In fact, a few low scores can clarify where you need to put your efforts. The report uses the following abbreviation: S for self, M for manager, D for direct report, C for coworker, and O for other. The first chart in the report provides an overview of your own assessment and the scores of others for each practice. Here we are just showing the first practice. Remember, scores range from 6 to 60. If you did not have enough observers in any given category to maintain anonymity of your observers, those observers will be added to the, quote, other category. The second chart provides the data in a bar graph. It shows the averages for each category of observer. The next page shows all of the behaviors listed from highest to lowest frequency based on the scores of your observer. We've pulled out a couple of examples to show you here. Notice to the right of the behavior, you have a column that shows which practice this behavior is associated with. The next column indicates how you scored yourself, and the next is an average of all of the ratings of your observers. The last column is an average of the ratings of the manager's scores. If the difference between how you scored yourself and how others scored you is greater than 1.5, this will be indicated with a plus sign if they scored you higher, or a minus sign if they scored you lower. The second behavior shows an example of this. Notice the minus sign on the scores. If you have very few pluses or minuses, this indicates that your self-perception is consistent with the perception of your observers. As you think about your self-improvement plan, looking at the last 10 behaviors on this page, those that you scored lowest in, might be a good place to start. The next few pages are summaries of the data for each of the 5 practices. Let's look at Model the Way again. For each question in this practice, you can see the breakdown of how your observers scored you. The last chart in the report shows your percentile ranking when compared to others in the LPI database. So for example, this person's manager rated them at about the 66th percentile in Model the Way. This means that his or her score was higher than 66% and lower than 34% of those taking the LPI. Once you have reviewed your scores, begin thinking about which practice you may want to focus your attention on first. Think about which specific behaviors that you want to perform more frequently. And think about what opportunities are available to you to practice those new behaviors. This is, after all, the Leadership Challenge.